Welcome back to Homeopathy at Home with Melissa. Hey, Melissa.
Hey Bree, I am super excited to talk about constitutional remedies. We get this question all the time, don't we?
All the time. Um, from all kinds, it's both sides too, practical side and classical. So I am looking forward to this. It's one that I think overlaps both worlds.
Mhm. Before we do that, I want to read this fan mail. And so sorry, Bree, that I forgot to mention this to you before. Let me get over here. So if you listening to this podcast right now, if you're on the Buzzsprout website, you can type in questions to me, and it looks like I don't know what it really looks like, but it's something like a text, almost like you're texting me. But it's not coming straight to my phone. It's going to what's called fan mail, and so then we see these questions, and then we can answer them and talk about them. And I
Okay.
want to try to remember to answer fan mail every time we do podcast episodes. So if you have a question and you ask it, you should expect to in the future hear an answer to it. So this one is from St. Louis, Missouri. And he or she says, I have a question about chelidonium from your podcast. You mentioned that it is good for menopause. Well, obviously, this is a she then. You mentioned that it's good for menopause, 6x, 1 to 2 times per day. What purpose would it serve and why would it be good for menopause? Um, so am I going to put you on the spot if I ask you, what do you think? Why do you think, Bree, that?
No,
Okay.
I have some thoughts. I'm going to look in the Materia Medica just to see if there's actual stuff I can read to you. But also, just knowing what I know about the female body, chelidonium is a huge liver remedy. And the liver directly affects your hormone levels. So, just for that reason alone, I would think that plays a big part. Um, I'm just trying to see if there's anything just in the Materia Medica I could give you right off the top. Well, it's not off the top of my head, but in here, I would really say though, okay, so for female, it has some irregular menses, menses too long, burning. Otherwise, there's not a lot just for female. But when you look at the liver, I would encourage you to do that. It does have some appetite things, which could be a big deal for some people. Bladder things, which during menopause can be an issue. What are your thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
I think that's it. It's chelidonium is a huge liver remedy,
Mhm.
and our hormones are what's the word, Bree? Processed. What what is the liver's role in hormones? It's if your liver is unhealthy, your hormones are likely to be unbalanced and vice versa, probably. So it's just really common that when you go into menopause, your liver is can be pretty taxed at that point.
Okay, I have
So,
it for you. Technical terms. The
okay,
liver plays a critical role in regulating female hormones by primarily metabolizing and breaking down excess estrogen, progesterone, and androgens,
excellent.
essentially acting as the body's primary site for eliminating these hormones once they're no longer needed, thus maintaining hormonal balance.
There you go, the
Fully
filter.
functioning liver can lead to hormonal imbalance because it can't clear the hormones from the blood system. So,
Right.
here you go.
There you go. So, but another big symptom of menopause is sleep gets very disturbed. And chelidonium, because it has a great effect on the liver, it
Mm-hmm.
really helps sleep. So
Yeah.
a lot of women and men, when I choose chelidonium for a man who I know has a liver issue and sleep issues, it's just really helpful. So there's that one. Um, if I remember, at the end of this podcast episode, we'll read another fan mail. And actually, Bree, that would be a really good one for you to answer as well. So the question is in and on the thing that I did for tonight. But anyway, um In acuity. It's in acuity.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is talk about constitutional prescribing. And again, we get this question all the time. So at the 2025 homeopathy retreat, I taught this class live to the ladies there. What's coming next is an opportunity for you all to join me in a live teaching on Zoom for everybody else, for the public. So if you're listening to this much later, months or years later, then the recording will be available to you on my website. But, as of right now, what we're doing is I want to give you a taste of what the full course is going to be like and what you're going to learn. But I also want to just explain to you constitutional prescribing.
Okay.
It's constant.
So can I ask a question before you even open? Who would this maybe be for? Could a beginner, like I'm homeopathy 101, I've only maybe taken Gateway 1, or I've done your mentorship program.
Mhm.
Where would you put this?
Yeah, I truly believe anybody, any level, because this is not advanced stuff, not like miasms. Miasms is pretty advanced. So it's not like that. But even if you're brand new and you're like, I don't, why do I even need to know this? It's very interesting. And the question is gonna come. People are
Yeah.
going, if you work with a homeopath, there's different ways to practice, and people are, you're going to hear it, and then you're going to wonder, oh, wait a minute, what's my constitutional remedy? I need to be on a constitutional remedy. And so you need to, I think it's good for everybody, every level.
Okay. And I even think, even if you're not practically well, practicing classically, I put those two together. Um, this is still good information and really useful. These are really useful remedies, and even thinking the direction of somebody's constitution can, I mean, I think be a good, not a good segue, that's not the term, but a good path sometimes to consider.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so what I want to do is just go through a couple of basics about constitutional prescribing. So, homeopathic remedies affect the vital energy and the constitutional vitality of the person. So, constitutional prescribing is good for people who are not sick. There's your key right there. So, in classical homeopathy, the term constitutional means the remedy that matches the totality of symptoms today. Let me say that again. In classical homeopathy, the term constitutional, when classical homeopaths use the word constitutional remedy or constitution, they mean their constitutional remedy is the remedy that matches the totality of symptoms, so the whole person today. The way Bree Hurlburt presents to me today, right now, that would be your constitutional remedy for the classical homeopath.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If it's today, does that mean it can be different tomorrow or 2 months from now?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
In classical homeopathy, the constitutional remedy and the constitution can change. So, Isiaga, and he was I'll tell you exactly who he was later. Isiaga defines constitutional as your healthy state, um, how you are when there's no problems. Again, when you are not sick. So how you function at normal capacity.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so it's opposite. Isiaga says Anne Murphy say something different than the classical homeopaths. Um,
Oh, okay. So even there's disagreement here on what a constitutional remedy is.
yes.
Okay. So there, of course, there is. Of course, like everything else, the more you know, the more you don't know.
Right.
That's
That's
great.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a bit of a, yeah. a disagreement here. So a classical constitutional would be the remedy that matches the totality of the symptoms today, right? And it's completely changeable. So I adhere to Isiaga's definition of constitutional remedies and states.
Okay, which would make sense because a a constitution, I mean, then why would you have the term constitutional remedy if it's changing all the time? It's just a remedy that fits you today.
Exactly. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Also, I also really do want to say I am not here to put down classical homeopaths. It's just different. There's just a different way to think and a different school of thought. And so, this is, if you're a classical homeopath listening to this, or you're working with a classical homeopath, this is not to say, that they're wrong or stupid or anything like that. So in classical homeopathy, they call the fundamental remedy the constitutional remedy, and they call the constitutional remedy the constitutional remedy. So, so, and Isiaga says that the fundamental remedy is different than the constitutional remedy. Okay, so Isiaga teaches or taught that you would get rid of the fundamental remedy state. That's where we are right now, Bree. You and I, and everybody listening to this and watching this is in their fundamental remedy state. You have pathology, you have most likely you have disease, you have things wrong, and that's why you're learning and using homeopathy, because you have things wrong. So we're going to address that fundamental state um, before we get to the constitutional state. I saw your wheels turning. Were you going to say something else?
Yeah, I mean, I is it possible, in your opinion, for someone to ever reach a constitutional state? Are you going to get there? I feel like I'm going to ask you questions ahead of the game.
No, no, I'm not. But no, that's a great question. And so I believe I've pretty much always said no. Like we always have, we don't, we're not whole, right? And completely 100% healthy until we reach our heavenly home. There's not,
Yeah.
Here on earth, there's not so anyway, but I do have several clients that I've worked with for several years, and they feel like there's nothing wrong. There's no pathology. There's not a symptom. There's not something we're addressing. So they are on their constitutional remedy. So I do
Okay.
have several clients who are like, I'm good. I don't
Okay.
have anything wrong with me that I want to address. So they're on their constitutional remedy.
Okay. So we're not talking like perfection. You
Um,
never get an acute illness or your body's always perfect every day. But okay, I'm putting this together. So what I consider a healthy person is a healthy body that can encounter disruption, encounter acute illness, and then come back to baseline without getting stuck in a chronic cycle of illness.
yeah,
So like if you eat something or you get sick, but you can come back to baseline, you're still healthy, you're not chronically sick. So in that situation, that'd be a person who's on their chronic or constitutional remedy.
right.
And you
That's
take it regularly if you're not sick.
that's right. Yeah. And we'll talk about that.
Okay, great.
So, so this, the Isiaga way is it just makes more sense to me. And so that's why I adhere to that. So the lesion level is where you're looking at the disease. And this is where most of us spend our time in homeopathy. So there's the lesion level. So Isiaga, taught in layers. He had the layers method. So you have the lesion layer, the fundamental layer, and then your constitutional. And I think there were more, honestly, I think there were more layers in Asiaga, but I'm not an Asiaga expert. So, but they're three. And actually, I have on my radar to teach some layers here on the podcast a little bit later. So, if there's a pathology, we always address that first. Always. That's the thing that's on top. That's the presenting issue, right? So it's the most important thing for the body's immune system. Therefore, it's the most important thing to address. We have to get rid of We have to clear the pathology so that the person can get to the fundamental layer, which is their general remedy that they need at that time in their life. It's not their constitutional remedy. So Dr. Murphy taught, he really hung out on the general remedy. You need your general remedy. Take your general remedy. Um, and so the fundamental is your general remedy that you need right now in your life. And it just kind of graphs on top of the constitutional. So you are I'm gonna get there. So the constitutional state is what you were born with, and I'm gonna talk about that. Is this getting confusing?
Nope, this is good. I mean, I am sure it's going to be confusing to people who this is the first time you've heard this stuff. This is actually really putting some bricks in place for me. And I've heard Melissa talk about this 100,000 times, probably to some degree, not this extensively. Um, so this is actually things are falling into place for me, but just know that there's been all those other 100 times I've listened to this constitutional stuff and not been able to place it completely. But no, this is a great explanation.
I think also for those that choose to come to the full course, we're going to go into a lot more detail, right? So
Right.
this is a podcast episode to give you a basic understanding.
Mhm.
And so if someone has a diagnosed disease, it is pathological. So like diabetes is an example. Underneath that is the fundamental. So your constitution is your genetic makeup. It's what you were born with. You can't change it. Um, these symptoms, these symptoms are not removable. So that's how you know what's your constitution and what's not your constitution. You can't remove the things about a person's constitution. So go ahead.
Okay, so if you didn't see Melissa, you heard her. She did quotes around symptoms that are not removable. Okay, are you saying would another term for symptoms there be like characteristics?
Yes, so like body type, skeletal build.
Okay. So symptom is not always meaning a pathology, like a sickness symptom. We're just saying a symptom is what's presenting.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for answering all my millions of questions.
I love it. So symptoms are signs, right?
Yep.
We teach that in classes all the time. Symptoms are signs. And so the signs, of your constitution are your body type, your skeletal build, hair color, eye color, skin texture, gender, genetic strengths and weaknesses, basic food desires and aversions, general susceptibilities, even your basic temperament or personality type. So it's what you were born with, essentially what your DNA codes for or your genotype. So let's give, when you think about calc carb, the remedy, you think about the calc, if you go and read calc carb in your materia medica, think about the calc carb individual, they are shorter than most people, broader, their skeleton is broad, slow metabolism, laid back, methodical, slow development, slow metabolism, cold blooded, chilly, prone to constipation. And then the calc carbs opposite is sulfur.
Mhm.
So sulfur is tall, slim, stooped, fast metabolism, desires sweets, prone to diarrhea, and warm blooded. So if your father was an alcoholic, that weak liver is passed on to that child. So that child has a constitutionally weak liver. He was born with that.
And you would say that even if they weren't symptomatic in like a negative way. Is that that's something you know from their big picture? You know inherently that's probably something they have?
Yeah, I think you could. I guess you could. I think normally we could
I think
find.
that's fair.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, because we definitely inherit those things. So, right, if
We see that happen.
your parent
So,
was an alcoholic and then you were conceived in that alcoholism, they have a weak liver, and so then yeah, your liver could also be weak. Um, so um, someone else might have a lot of, or yeah, might eat um, a really bad diet, have a lot of suppressed anger, eat a lot of sugar and junk food, then they've acquired a weak liver. That's fundamental. Okay, so two people with a weak liver, one was born with it or inherited it. That's their constitution. The other one acquired it because of their choices, and that's fundamental. So you can look at somebody's physique. You got a question or a thought?
No, that just is really cool.
So you can look at somebody's physique and make a rudimentary calculation. Um, like it's like a hint towards what this person's constitution may be. It's not complete, but you can see a calc carb, you can see a sulfur. And I'm going to talk about some of these, physical characteristics in a few minutes, but it can be a hint towards that. So, I've referenced Iziaga. So he was Dr. Francisco Xavier Iziaga. He was from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he lived from 1923 to 2001. And he suggested that there are basic four constitutions, and that's calc carb, sulfur, silica, and phosphorus. Then later he added possibly lycopodium. Okay. So this is really cool. Think about Laurel and Hardy. So you youngins might not know who Laurel and Hardy are. Do you know, Bree?
I mean, are we talking about? No, I'm not gonna say that because that might embarrass me. No, I don't.
Old black and white TV show. I definitely saw it on TV sometimes when I was a kid. I didn't like it or want to watch it, but I think maybe my grandparents were watching it or one of my parents or something. I don't know. But Laurel and Hardy it was a TV show. You see them? Pull up.
Yeah, okay, I recognize them.
Okay.
Yep.
So if right now, if you're listening to
This
this,
is so good. This is such a good example.
right? If you're
Yeah.
listening to this or watching this, go and Google Laurel and Hardy. And so Oliver Hardy is an extended calc carb physique. So you see the short fat guy was calc carb. Stan Laurel, who could be a nice silica, he was pretty bashful and timid and shy. If you have to watch the show to see how he behaved. And that was his onstage personality, right? So that was his character in the show. So the basic idea is that both of these physiques, so that Laurel was tall and slim. And so the basic idea is that both of these physiques can accumulate remedy layers on top of their healthy constitution, but you could never give a remedy that would change that individual's physique, their physical structure, right? We're not, you when you're constitutional calc carb, you might be shorter and broader and a little flabbier and whatever, and you're not going to change that. Um, outside of you're not going to change that with natural ways anyway. So then that base physical structure is what Isiaga would term as the constitutional level remedy. Okay. So constitutional remedies. Um, I remember Isiaga said four, maybe five. And so calc carb to describe calc carb. Um, and remember in the full class, we're going to go into more detail about these remedies, what they look like and all that, and when you would use them. So the calc carb is short, square. Um, this might be the professional weightlifter, football player, big bulky guys with thick, short, strong arms and a neck, but the torso is squatty, square, and strong. The phosphorus tend to be tall, slim, fast metabolism. Their teeth can be triangular in shape, and especially the canines. So the pointy canines, um, we see those especially in children, but sometimes we see those in adults too. And those can be long distance runners, marathon runners. And then sulfur is where everything tends to be particularly harmonious. So they're not too slim, not too broad. Sulfur is what a lot of people, this is just your, like your middle of the road, normal, everything is, what's my word? Proportionate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, so then silica is thin, pale, and frail with a large head. And then lycopodium, if we, if we're going to adhere to that lycopodium as a constitutional remedy, then they can be thin, with a big belly. The face is pale and yellow, deeply furrowed, and looks elongated. So just remember, if you're on one of these remedies right now and you don't fit the physique, it's because we're not using the remedy for your constitution. We're using the remedy for a fundamental or a pathological layer. Okay. All right. So you're, looking at you, Bree, you're not a calc carb, but you might need calc carb at some point in your life, right?
Okay. Yep, I'm following. I'm just keeping my mic on in case I need to ask a question. I realized I was muted, so didn't want to not be able to ask it.
All right. So Dr. Murphy, in his repertory, so if you have Dr. Murphy's repertory, you can look at it right now and you can see under the constitutional remedies, he lists 7 metals as constitutional remedies. So let's confuse you a little bit more, right?
Done.
This is just different ways to look at it. So we believe that Dr. Murphy chose those because of his chemical background. And he said that it was that gold, silver, mercury, copper, iron, lead, and tin are all constitutional remedies. And he also stated in his CHOM course that constitutional remedies are most often minerals.
So he's the only one who thinks like are those in addition to those other constitutional remedies? Is he the outlier here who thinks that's different?
He is the outlier, like that's what he did, right?
Yeah,
That's what he was.
thinks different.
He was like, yeah, he absolutely thought different and pretty genius. So, when he says something, I'm like, I wanna listen to that and pay attention to that.
Yeah.
So, um, so so constitution is the most misused word in homeopathy. I hear it all the time, all the time. Well, are you going to give me my constitutional remedy? Or how do I know what my constitutional remedy is? And I definitely don't mean, like, I didn't mean to make that sound like y'all are so stupid. I don't mean that at all, really at all. I didn't mean for it to even look or sound that way. But it is the most misused word. So when the average homeopath says constitutional, they mean fundamental. And so if you say, a person is a nat mure, they need nat mure because they had grief. That grief was acquired in their life. They weren't born with the grief. They can tell you when they got the grief. Um, so they're not a nat mure. They just need nat mure right now. Okay. So environment versus genetics um, is what you've acquired in life versus what you were born with. Your environment is what we acquire, the things in our environment and the things that happen to us. And that's the difference between constitutional and fundamental. So constitutions can be built up, but not changed. We can strengthen them, we can keep them strong, but we can't change them. Fundamentals and pathologies can be changed. We can clear those layers off.
And so sometimes you can see the Constitution through the fundamentals that are there,
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
but not always. Like, are some people so, if you're
Mm.
just looking at physique for constitutional, maybe. So
Well,
is it just physique that you primarily base these on? Because I know there's so much more to remedies than just physical build.
Right, no, not physique. So looking at that list of remember the gender, genetic
Oh,
strengths and
yeah.
weaknesses, basic food desires. So all those things that when we take an initial case, right, the initial consultation, we ask we know, we end up finding out all these things. So very often I can see somebody's constitutional remedy in the beginning. Sometimes I can't, and that's okay. And we're going to get to it, right? So I'll figure it out at some point. All right. So, your constitution is your original framework. Your genetic makeup is who you are, and how you lived your life brought things on top of that. Right. So amendments. So these amendments are fundamental, pathological, acute, and emergency layers. If you're helping someone's constitution or, addressing someone's constitution, that person has to be healthy. And this one little sentence, this is what I say all the time. The constitutional remedy or the constitutional state is your healthy state. That's our goal in homeopathy, is to get back to that state. Your healthiest, the healthiest that you can be while you're here on this earth. So there's nothing else to address in the constitutional state because all the fundamentals have been cleared, all the diseases have been cleared. Um, and then, therapeutics, acutes, and emergencies are all cleared away. So there's nothing left but their genetic makeup. So when we get to that constitutional state and you're giving the constitutional remedy, it's also a good idea to give cell salts and herbs, and maybe in your constitutional remedy to boost your constitution to its optimum, so that the person, it's like maintaining the healthiest state that you can be. Now, I'm not an herbalist, so I don't tell people what herbs to take. I don't, because I don't know enough. So if you want to take herbs, I think herbs are great, but you need to go, do your own research or work with somebody who knows which herbs you need when or what. But cell salts are homeopathic remedies, and cell salts are great to help maintain along with your constitutional remedy. So your constitution is a vitality barometer. So you are fixed with this. Again, this is your genetic makeup. And as things happen, stressors happen in life, we get, so Dr. Murphy would call them dings, D-I-N-G-S, ding, ding, so something happens, you get in an accident, you have a grief, you have a loss, a stressor, you have a stressful job, childbirth, an illness, whatever, you get a ding. So then you have a ding and that then can lead to, it can start to drain you. So this is why if you get in an accident, but you feel fine, you're like, I don't, or you twist your ankle and you're like, oh, I'm fine, you know, or you have a little cold and you're like, oh, I'm fine. This is why I use homeopathic remedies, even if it's not terrible, because I want to address the ding before it grows, right? Because it just starts, then your energy just keeps, Dr. Murphy would teach, your energy would just keep going down and down and down because you didn't address the ding. Um, and our constitution should be running at 80 to 90%. So when your energy is leaking, so to speak, so basically when you're putting out more energy than you can recoup during sleep, then you start to really go into energy debt. And how many people are in energy debt these days? We are so busy, right? So fatigue, chronic fatigue. So things that drain us are bad diet, emotional stress, um, stress at work, taking care of other people, elderly or children. So just like pouring yourself out to other people are things that drain us. Um, and then as you are being drained, your vitality, your health kind of goes down, and then layers start being built on top, right? So you start getting pathologies or things start happening. So we remove all of those things, and then when the person is healthy and built up, then we come in with herbs and exercise, diet, cell salts to boost
Mm.
the
Maintain
constitution.
and prevent.
Mm.
Okay.
Constitutional prescribing is preventative medicine and maintenance. That's really the basic of it. So if you, in the full course, if you haven't taken the full course yet, or if if you're watching this later and you haven't taken it yet, or if you are interested in coming to the live one when we teach it, we are going to go into a lot more detail about the remedies, the potencies, frequency of dosing. Um, we're going to talk about layers more in more detail, the layers of a person's health, understanding the different layers, prioritization and treatment, um, constitutional prescribing in depth, what defines a constitution, morphological observations, which is using the physical traits to infer the constitutional type. So we're going to talk about how you can do that other than just looking at a person. Historical perspectives of constitutional prescribing, and fundamental and pathological prescribing. So we're going to go into that in this course. We're going to talk about fundamental remedies, pathological remedies, and I'll present some case studies to you. And then practical strategies for case taking, for the chronological case analysis, and when to prescribe. We're going to talk about tools to maintain and optimize your constitution, diet, lifestyle, prevention strategies, and then we'll conclude with a live Q&A at the end so that you can get all of your questions answered. So come to the live course. That information will be on my website. Timing, how you can register, all the things will be there. So did you think of anything else, Bree? Any other questions or things that I should share with people?
No, not for this. I think there is so much more that we could talk about. I know even for myself, I'm thinking through cases that I'm working through now and already, processing through all those things. But I think this was so much information to enough to really get people's wheels turning. But also there's so much more. There's just so much more we could do.
Yeah, love
Yeah,
it. Thank you for asking good questions. This is why I love, because this is why I love having you with me here, and that you're coming into this hopefully like a lot of the listeners, and you think of questions maybe that they would have. But listen, if you have a question and you want to ask it in the fan mail, um, part it's on the Buzzsprout. It's not on my website, it's on Buzzsprout. So that link is somewhere. I'll find it. I'll put it in the show notes here. So yeah, so you can go and find fan mail. And speaking of fan mail, let's read this last one before we go.
okay.
So, and I know this is going to be a great question for you to answer, Bree. So, this one is from Fort Worth, Texas, and she asks, "What does the natural way of birth control look like if you are irregular and still nursing?" I have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I actually would love to hear yours too, because this is a bit of, I wouldn't say there's a straightforward answer here. Number one, I want to know, are your periods irregular because like meaning you've been breastfeeding and they're just coming back, or have they always been irregular? For somebody who's always been irregular, I mean, natural birth, I would probably do, I think natural family planning is by far the best option. Um, because you're not messing with your hormones. You can use other forms of natural birth control if you want, like other forms of protection. But in that case, if I was always irregular before and had a really unpredictable period starting, I would do the stuff like your basal temp in the morning, doing ovulation strips, making sure you're keeping up with if you're really trying to prevent. If your periods are just starting to come back and they're just not regular yet, I mean, I still think I would do a lot of that stuff. Mine, if were very regular. So I could gauge by other things, even like cervical mucus, how I'm feeling, discharge. There's a lot of other ways you can tell around your ovulation time. And I would start tracking that immediately after nurse or after having a baby, because sometimes you can ovulate and not have a period for a little bit after having a baby. So those were things I was really aware of and tracked right away. But if you don't know that, there are still a lot of great ways you can track your body's regularity. Otherwise, you need to get your hormones taken care of. If you're really irregular, you can still be on good remedies to get you regular, even while you're nursing. What would you say?
Yeah. So from the homeopathic standpoint, it's what symptoms are presenting. um what does it look like for you? So 10 people could post this same question and get 10 different remedies, so I need to talk to the person. And so I would be doing all the things that you said, Bree, right? Because you need to be careful if you don't want to get pregnant yet. And so you need to track things and use other forms of protection that are that are natural and safe. But then for homeopathy, I mean, yeah, we've got our biggest hormone remedies, but I don't know if those would be a good fit. So we really have to look at the person. What does it look like for them? What does it feel like? What's their mental emotional state? There's so much to look at.
Yeah, for sure. And then you can move into more successful, probably natural family planning. I would never, ever, ever use hormonal birth control again.
Mhm.
Um, Even in the Western medicine world, I will tell you that there is evidence to show the links between some serious conditions and hormonal birth control that we're just starting to see from people my age who were started on it when they're 13, 14, 15 years old, and now what we're seeing as we enter perimenopause and into menopause. And those are things that there are links to how a woman moves through that from having ever taken it, even when if she never did in her 20s or 30s. So it just sticks with you. It disrupts them so deeply that it may not show up till you're 45, 50 years old, but it still is, it messes with you. And I mean, if you've listened long enough, you know how we feel about it. So I'm just gonna leave it.
And
Don't.
that's an acquired, right? That's an acquired thing. We took a hormonal birth control, or mess with our hormones artificially. We acquired issues in our hormones, and then homeopathy can change that.
Mhm.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, "Oh no, I took birth control, 10, 15 years ago." Just come on. We're just gonna use homeopathy and clean up your diet and clean up your cleaning supplies at home, and we know that what you breathe in, the fragrances and things, those can mess with your hormones. So just baby steps, start cleaning it up. Use homeopathy. We can change that. We can get it back to normal for you.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that answers your question. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah. Great podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you guys next time. Look for details of the full course on my website and in the show notes.
All right.